Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here, and in today's video we are going to be talking about some really interesting Utah history, and it goes from the past all the way to my time, my childhood. It kind of crosses over, and we're going to talk about Utah's first natural disaster that required federal aid. It's an interesting bit of history. So this takes place in Spanish Fork Canyon. Now, Spanish Fork Canyon is named as such because this is where the Escalante and Dominguez and Escalante expedition, Spanish expedition, came through, where they left Santa Fe and were trying to find their way to a Spanish mission in California. It's an overland route. They didn't find it, and I'll do a separate video just on that, but they came through. The Spanish expedition came through Spanish Fork Canyon. So it's got that history all the way back to the 1700s. But in the late 1800s, then a small town started to develop, and this was the town of Thistle. And it was really kind of an early 1900s town, but in the late 1800s, you started to have a few families living there, and it became a railroad town. Once they linked the railroad through, then the town started to grow. And this was a stopover. As people traveling across the country, they didn't really have cars. I mean, people were traveling still by horse and buggy or by train. And train was amazing. You could hop on and you could go across the country. But there were these stopovers, and these are not modern trains. These are early trains that are burning coal as their fuel. And so you have to have a stopover where, number one, your train can get more coal and also can get more water to make the steam, because these are steam engines. And then also a place for the people to stay. So Thistle was a railroad town, and it was a quaint little town. It was a pretty place. At its height, in about 1917, there was about 600 residents, but it was a nice town. It was small, but again, this is a stopover town. This is a railroad town. So they even had a 2-story hotel where guests crossing the country could stop over and stay in class and style. They had a nice schoolhouse, and that schoolhouse is no longer there anymore, but I mean, they were like, we're going to educate our children, we're going to have, this is a place that was meant to grow. But again, its peak was about 1917. But things change, and as technologies change, so does the landscape. So by 1950, people were switching technologies, and coal-burning trains are being phased out, and in their place was the diesel trains. And as such, you could just go faster and you could keep going through. And so the town kind of started to retreat, and it started to have fewer and fewer residents because there was no longer an infrastructure other than just locals farming in the area. And so in 1972, it was listed as a ghost town. There were still a few people living there. It was officially listed as a ghost town, and there was all these really quaint, fun houses and structures, and the old hotel were there. It was a neat place to see, apparently. This is before my time. But then something happened. This is where it starts to get really interesting. In the winter of 1982 to 1983, I remember it because we had a huge snowfall, incredible amount of snow here in northern Utah. And it stayed and stayed and stayed and stayed and stayed. And then in the spring, it stayed cold forever, and then it melted all at once. It was wild. It was a wild time because there were floods everywhere. There was so much water coming down all at once from our mountains that State Street in downtown Salt Lake City, the capital of Utah, got turned into a river. And everybody and their dog was asked. They'd get on the news. They'd be like, come out and grab sandbags. Everybody. We all would go out and we'd make sandbags, and they would reroute these rivers coming down from the mountains that were just gushing. And I remember going over to my uncle's house. There was a river going down his neighborhood, and my grandpa gave us these these duck hunting decoys, and we just put them, we'd float them down this little river going down the road, and pick them back up and run them down and float the ducks down. So it was a wild summer that year. But that much moisture saturating in, and then there was rains all spring and all saturating into the landscape. In Spanish Fork is not a geologically sound location. There's a bunch of mud and silt and clay in these hillsides. It's not rock. It's not very safe. And so things started to happen because you had the road going through the bottom of Spanish Fork Canyon, and you also had the railroad going through there. And all of a sudden, by April 13th of 1983, the road started to buckle itself and started to move. And road, maintenance crews worked hard to be able to keep this open, because you got to understand, this is a lifeline for so many states, for Wyoming and New Mexico and Utah and Idaho. This corridor through Spanish Fork is vital, and keeping this open both for railway and also for cars is vital. It started to buckle. April 14th, the last train went through because the mountainside looked like it was going to start to give. Nobody knew what was going to happen though. All of a sudden, the entire mountain started to move and shift, and everybody was like, "Oh no, this is massive!" And it started to come down by April 18th, then the road, the entire canyon, had been blocked off by this landslide, and water, the Spanish Fork River, now no longer had an outlet, and it started to form a lake. So by April 18th, all the buildings in the town of Thistle were all covered by water. All the rooftops were covered. They're all underwater. And some of these people had as little as 2 hours warning to evacuate. It's like, you got to get out of here. This town is going to become a lake. And people didn't know about this. So by April 19th, the landslide was moving about 2 feet an hour, and it had completely covered Highway 6. And then it moved to about 3 to 4 feet an hour of moving. And eventually, within just like a week, you had a lake where the town of Thistle had formerly been. And this was about 1,000 feet wide, 200 feet deep, and miles long. This was Utah's first national disaster where they said, we need some federal aid. And this threw off everything. This threw off actually the entire country, because these trade routes and these companies that would ship things by train or ship things by semi-truck now had to go like out of their way, like out of state, and all hundreds of miles out and around to be able to get to these places. And it stayed that way for a while. It was crazy. And so the crews were like, we got to do something about this. What do we do? What do we do? Well, the first and most pressing concern, even though the economy was tanking because of this, was the fact that this lake was building and building and was getting up to the top of where this landslide had covered up. And the worry was, this is all just mud and silt from a landslide. This isn't rock. This is a natural dam, but not a good one. The second that water goes over, it's just going to have a massive flood, and it's going to wipe out all the towns down below, like the town of Spanish Fork, Utah. And so we got to drill a hole. We got to get this river through. So that was the first thing, was you had crews that were drilling a hole through and making a pathway for the river through this massive mudslide. And they did, and they were able to get it through, and they were able to get the level to start going down. At the same time, the railroad company was working hard to, the railhead used to be below in the bottom of the canyon. Now they're making it up on the side. They were blasting through and digging a tunnel through to route back up and to go out, towards Green River, Utah. And they did it, and they got it through. And eventually they opened it up, and I remember going up there with my dad when it happened, when they opened up the road that first week. And I remember driving up that hill because the sun was rising, and it was just like blasting in our face. And then I looked over and he's like, that's where that was. And I couldn't believe it. It was just literally this entire mountainside had just washed down. It's surreal. It's larger than human scale to think on things in that way. I remember playing in the sandbox, and just, you shove the hose down into the sand, it starts to bubble out, and it starts to make these landslides. It was literally the exact same thing. The exact same geological event, just on a massive scale, miles and miles and miles in size. So it's an interesting bit of history. Now, the town of Thistle today really doesn't have anybody. There's a few people, and when I went to film the other day, there's a few new houses. There's a couple houses that people are taking over trying to restore, and there's a few new houses built in the landscape there. But I'm like, you know what? Let's take a drone up. Let's film, and let's take a look around. Let's take a look at this place, and I'm going to film some shots. So why don't we go and do that? Let's go take a quick flight, and let's see this up close and get a better sense of all this. Yeah, it's really incredible, this technology that we have to be able to use drones today. All of the other photos that I've shown in this video so far just do not capture the scale. This literally looks like a glacier, and it moves in the same way, but just sped up. It's incredible to think of this much earth moving at one time. You can literally watch it move. It's a scale that I just can't really wrap my head around. Now when we look down here, this is sort of the north side of the lake, and around and to the left is where the town of Thistle was. But right in front of you was under 200 feet of water. And you can see at the very bottom there, the edge of the landslide that has now been kind of moved. Now this up here where the freeway is, that was blasted out of the mountain because of this. And down below you can see the Spanish Fork River, and you can see where the road used to be. All around, this entire landscape is clearly geologically unstable. It's mostly just clay and dirt heaped up. It's not very stable. Flying back over here, again, you can see where in a very short period of time, crews blasted through very abruptly to try to make a new road that was higher up. This is passing through on the way towards Price and Green River, and you can see it was just a hack job because people were desperate to get to their families and their houses, and this is driving through again. Not the most geologically sound site, and there are always rock slides that happen here. But again, these work crews were so desperate to open back trade and people's ability to commute. Driving back down again to the left, you can see where the river flows down, and you can see where the train used to be. And all of this was built very rapidly. But again, going around the corner and just seeing, it looks just like a glacial moraine. It looks like a glacial debris field. And this is an entire mountain. Now we lucked out and made it right in time. These are the trains. This is the train tunnels that were blasted through in record-breaking time to be able to open up the railways again. The railway originally was much further lower in the canyon. But you can see they're still shipping coal, and this is still an important commodity to be able to provide electricity for people. I'm always intrigued at human ingenuity and our ability to just say, we're going to blast holes through a mountain and we're going to have a trackway that goes through. It really is remarkable when you think about it. If you were to do it from nothing, that would be impressive. Now down here, this is the river that they drilled through the mountain to let out the lake that had formed. And you can see the Spanish Fork River is flowing, but you can again see this is kind of a hack job, and you can see where sediments still fall down from either side, but again they just get washed down by the river. But without this hole opening up the river, things would have filled up again. And you can see this is one of the houses that is still around. When I was a kid, there were far more houses around, but a lot of them have just pretty much completely fallen apart and disintegrated. But there are stories and records and lawsuits that were filed because there's people who had just bought houses and just built houses. One couple had only just 9 months earlier built their house, and apparently the railroad did know that there was a geologic hazard and still allowed this to happen. And so there were a lot of lawsuits back and forth over this because so many people just lost their houses and they had put everything into that. What would it be like to just go ahead and build your dream and then have it go away? We're going to zip in here to another house. This is a nice stone house, and all that's left is the foundation, because again, this was under 200 feet of water. 42 years ago, this was under 200 feet of water, and now you would never know it. Which just goes to show 42 years ago is not that long ago. Landscapes can change radically, and when we look at archaeological sites, we need to understand that. You know, you would never understand that there was a whole city here, and you would never understand that this whole city was underwater. But it's important that we are open-minded to the fact that the landscape changes. Let's go ahead and take a look at this other house here. The town of Thistle today, it really is a beautiful place. But it has this scarred past. and some people were building new houses higher up on the hill. But what would it be like to have lived in this house in this quaint, tiny little town back in the mountains of Utah, right next to a beautiful river? It would have been a wonderful place to live. And these poor people only had about 2 hours of warning before a lake started to form where their houses were. I can't even imagine what it would be like to lose that all so quickly. And again, this whole pathway was under 200 feet of lake at one time. It's important that we remember this. This is why history matters. We need to understand, because history will repeat itself. The landscape of the earth is always moving and is always changing. There's natural disasters and there's human-caused disasters. And it's important that we are fluid and changeable with it. Otherwise, everything can get destroyed. Well, I hope you enjoyed coming along with me, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about the ghost town of Thistle and the landslide that caused Utah's first national emergency. It's fascinating to still see the scarred landscape today, and it's a cautionary tale, but it's also fascinating to relive this history. So thank you for coming along. If you haven't already, if you could hit subscribe to the channel, I very much appreciate it. And always remember that life is a gift. So never stop learning and never stop exploring. We'll see you next time.